Welcome to Prepare the Way, a show dedicated to all matters related to the new evangelization. I am your host, Martha Fernández-Sardina, Director of the Office for Evangelization of the Archdiocese of San Antonio and of Prepare the Way Enterprises, a ministry dedicated to helping Catholics become everyday evangelized evangelizers. I'm dressed in red. It's the color of passion, of love, of the Holy Spirit, of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and the color of martyrdom, and even the color of freedom. Many flags around the world, including our own, have red, white, and blue. We are facing challenges around the world, challenges to our religious freedoms, and many have given their lives for the faith. To discuss the martyrdom of Mexican martyrs, which will be highlighted in the movie For Greater Glory, known also as Cristiada, and the challenges we face in our own nation for our religious freedoms, I have as my guest today Auxiliary Bishop Oscar Cantú. Welcome, Bishop.
Thank you, Marta. Good to be here with you, and what a wonderful time for this particular movie to come out. Very timely with the issue of religious liberty, something that Mexico has faced for over a century, and continues to work on those issues, and has gained a lot of appropriate freedoms for the Church in the past couple of decades, thank goodness, but it went through some very, very dark times, and that's something that we'll be talking about the movie, something that it points out, a very well done historical piece that's done in this movie. And it's very pertinent to us because we also are facing some challenges with regard to religious liberty here in the United States.
Let's contextualize this for our viewers and listeners. The Church, even from the early days, has suffered martyrdom. Christians, if you're really a disciple, you rather die than deny the faith, the beliefs, but also the practice of the faith. So that's part of what we want to talk about. We want to talk about the fact that religious liberty or freedom is a God-given right and should not be intruded upon or threatened by any government, and that is happening in lots of countries, China and Mexico, and right now, even here in the United States. And then the other thing we want to talk about is this month-long time of prayer that we are going to have here in the Archdiocese, which is our response locally to the United States Catholic Conference, or Conference of Catholic Bishops, call for a fortnight of prayer, 14 days of prayer. We're going to do a whole month long because we're good Catholics. So let's start a little bit with what happened with the Mexican Revolution, was it? And this persecution of the Church, which is depicted in this movie For Greater Glory, Cristiada, which is a very powerful production that really depicts the price to be paid for religious freedom.
Right. Well, you know, Mexico had in its laws, in its an earlier constitution from, if I remember correctly, from 1857, many laws that prohibited and limited significantly the exercise of religion, particularly of the Catholic Church. The concern of government at that time was the influence of foreign powers, and because the Catholic Church is an international church, and it's particularly in those days, they believed that the Pope ruled everything and down to meticulous details, and so they were concerned about influence of a foreign authority, and so they had all of these laws in their constitution from the mid 19th century. They were sometimes followed, sometimes not strictly followed, but in the mid 1920s, when President Calles came to power in Mexico, he vigorously enforced these laws and created new ones to persecute the Church. He was fiercely anti-Catholic. And so that was the time that this time of the Cristero movement, when people who died for their faith.
What does Cristero mean?
Well, it's someone.
Where does it come from?
Sure, it's someone who stands by Christ, and these martyrs, they were known as Cristeros because in their dying moments, as they were hanged or shot to death, they would proclaim, they would yell out, "Viva Cristo Rey."
So Cristo, Cristero,
Right.
so a Christer or
That's
a
right.
Christian.
That's right.
So the Cristero movement, and so some of them were willing to, and in fact did. How many? Are we talking 10 or 100? And were some of them actually saintly men and women?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, there were 26 who were canonized together some 12 years ago or so, 10 years ago. In fact, I happened to be there in Rome.
Oh, really?
It was May the 21st on my my anniversary of ordination.
Oh, wonderful!
And I happened to be there in the Vatican for the canonization ceremony. It's beautiful. But at that time, I didn't know their stories. I mean, I knew in general, what had happened, but I didn't know their particular stories. And this movie follows not one who was one of those 26, but one who was beatified later, Blessed Jose Sanchez. He was a young boy.
How young?
He was martyred when he was 14 years old.
Wow. Now, that is what it means to be a disciple, to be ready today to die for the faith if necessary, not wait until I'm 40 or 400.
Right, yeah. When are you ready? And it's a moving story, and it's absolutely historical. This the story that this movie follows, and so that's what makes it so engaging.
What were some of the things, and we see that in the movie, and we will see a short trailer shortly. What were some of the things that the church was, what were some of the freedoms of the church that were being either limited or absolutely just taken away from them? Was the church free to exercise its worship and teachings or not?
One of the things that President Calles instituted and had passed into law was the removal of all foreign priests, foreign-born priests. So it was this fear of any foreign power. And so, and there were quite a few.
Of course.
Because the church is international, and the church is always in movement and sending missionaries to wherever they're needed. And many of them belonged to religious orders, the Jesuits and others. And so they're international communities, and so they send priests to wherever they're needed. So quite a few of those foreign-born priests were expelled from the country. The government confiscated church property, considered it now government property, limited the exercise of priests. For example, in some states, if there were 200 priests available, maybe only 20 were given the permission to exercise their priestly duties. And so it was limited in that way, and so it was a really difficult time of persecution. And they were the bishops in Mexico were constantly in communication with the Vatican to see what would be the proper response. And at a certain point, the bishops, the Mexican bishops, decided to simply close the remaining churches because as a protest to the government of its unjust taking over of the church properties and limiting the exercise of religion. And so so this caused terrible upheaval in a country that was 99% Catholic. And people were not able to exercise and practice their faith. They had to go underground. Many of them did. Many of those priests had to hide in people's homes and celebrated the sacraments and in the dark of night. And so it was a very literally and metaphorically dark time for Mexico.
You know, Bishop, this is so important that we know this, and I'm so happy that the movie is out and that people can watch it in local theaters, and EWTN is carrying some coverage of that, and you'll probably get a copy of a DVD soon. For Greater Glory, known in Latin America as Cristiada. Because we are a church that spans throughout 20 centuries, in the 21st now, but we don't know sometimes, unless we've been to China or some country in Africa where there is persecution to this day, we might forget that, as the church has always taught, the blood of martyrs is the seed of the faith, the seed of the church, that we have the church and the liberties we have and the free exercise of religion because we've been willing to stand by the gospel that calls us to lay down our lives for the faith. And we don't know what persecution is, really. Oh, sure, especially in the United States for the past 150, 200 years. We have not had a foreign war or an international war on these grounds. You know, until 9/11, we had not seen violence in the continental United States from a foreign power. And we have not seen until now, well, we actually have seen, and we're going to get into that also in detail, we have not been noticing slow but steady erosions to the liberty that we are guaranteed by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and so forth in this nation. In fact, this nation was built on the premise of having religious liberty and religious freedom, freedom of conscience. And there have been some erosions, and we will detail those soon. This is something that should awaken all of us, the story of the Mexican Revolution, of the Cristeros, and of the martyrdoms that are going on around the world. This should awaken us, shouldn't you say? And going back to Blessed, was it Juan? Jose Sanchez. Jose Sanchez. Even this 14-year-old was awakened in his faith, wasn't it? And it's beautifully depicted in the movie. It's very nice. I've got this this holy card, and I was just reading the back side of it. We'll flash it on the screen so you can see his image, and you'll notice that Blessed Jose is barefoot, and I won't give the story away, but I'll let you see the movie and see why historically he is depicted as barefoot. Blessed Jose Sanchez, he was 14, was tortured and executed by government forces during the 20th century persecution of the church in Mexico because he refused to renounce his Catholic faith. Each time they heard him demanding that he repeat the words, "Death to Christ the King," he refused, declaring, "I will never give in. Viva Cristo Rey. Viva la Virgen de Guadalupe." Strengthened by his special love for Jesus and the Eucharist, he was filled with loyalty, courage, and holy defiance to his last breath. He was beatified in 2005. Holy defiance. Why don't we watch the trailer of the movie so that we might be awakened in our faith, so that we might know what it is to have holy defiance and what it is that the gospel says actually in Acts of the Apostles 5, it is better to obey God rather than to obey men. That is, when unjust laws are being imposed upon us. Let's take a look at the trailer of For Greater Glory.
Mexico is under siege. A plot to poison the minds and hearts of our people, to turn them into religious fanatics, this evil, this threat, it will not be tolerated.
You're an army fighting for God and for the church. We will fight with honor and dignity.
In the United States, we've been following your war with the Catholic Church.
I would hardly call it a war.
There is a time for peace, a time for war.
Even if I were younger, I would not fight.
You cannot fight for something you don't believe in.
I believe in freedom. The fate of Mexico, it's in God's hands, not yours or mine.
This will be one of the most important battles of our struggle.
If you lose this war, we're not going to lose this war.
Why are you here?
We want to be Cristeros.
Cristeros?
Yes.
We are going to send a message that freedom is our lives. And we will defend it or die trying. ¡Que viva Cristo Rey! ¡Que viva Cristo Rey!
Welcome back to Prepare the Way. I'm your host, Martha Fernández-Sardina, with my guest, Auxiliary Bishop Oscar Cantú. We're talking about religious freedom, freedom of conscience, the Mexican Revolution, the Cristero movement, and our willingness to not only live the faith, but even die for it if necessary. I quoted scripture. I want to read to you now from it. It says in Acts 5:28, these are the leaders of the Sanhedrin speaking to the apostles. We gave you strict orders not to teach about that name, yet you have filled Jerusalem with your teaching and are determined to make us responsible for that man's blood, speaking of Jesus. And St. Peter replies, better for us to obey God than men. Bishop, we want to obey authority. Scripture itself tells us to obey legitimate authority, but sometimes there are unjust laws. And we've been speaking about some of those unjust laws and our concern, the concerns of the bishops for unjust laws in our country. And we need to stand up like Peter and the apostles, don't we, to obey God rather than unjust laws.
Absolutely. There's a hierarchy of laws. Laws in a land should be created and based on natural law. And natural law, as people of faith, we understand, is the imprint of God's eternal law in nature and His creation. And so we see this hierarchy of laws, and as people of faith, we're able to see that. God is the ultimate law, and His eternal laws. Then there are ecclesiastical laws and natural law, and then civil law. And so sometimes, for various reasons, we have civil laws that are, or criminal ones that are unjust, that they're not based on natural law, and so we speak out towards that, and we work to change those unjust laws in an appropriate way. Now, I think our viewers just saw the trailer for the movie for Greater Glory, and we caution any viewers, anyone who would be interested in seeing the movie. It is a very violent movie, and it's historical. It's about a battle that took place, and it's very bloody. Now we want to also note that the church never condoned the taking up of arms against the government. These were individual Catholics who did this on their own.
In their desire to defend the faith, and maybe even in the cultural context of the time, because they were being also accosted, and the army was out with arms, and so maybe in that sense they took up arms, even if the church itself didn't.
And the Catholic Church is not opposed. It's not completely pacifist in that sense. We do believe that there are just reasons for war and to take up arms, and so now there's a huge difference from the injustices in the Mexican Revolution against the church to what we're facing now in the United States. It's a very, very different. Now there are erosions of our religious liberties, so that's the connection that we're making here. So we are certainly not calling anyone to violence.
I'm glad you clarify that, and let's talk a little bit then. We're going to have another show together because there's a lot to be said about this. The bishops of the United States have been noticing for quite a while now, and have been speaking for a while about these erosions to religious liberty. But more recently, because of the HHS mandate, the Health and Human Services Department's mandate to all institutions, Catholic institutions included, to provide health care services that include sterilization, contraceptives, and abortifacients, which goes against our religious conscience. We cannot do that in good conscience. We cannot obey those laws against the law of God and natural law. The bishops have rallied up and said, enough. wait here, this cannot be supported. And that's part of what's going on right now. Tell us about it and about this call to prayer, which they've called the Fortnight for Freedom, and we're extending it to a full month of prayer.
Exactly, yeah. That's something that Archbishop Gustavo wanted to do, that he wanted to extend this fortnight, or 14 days of prayer, into a month and 4 days. So we'll begin on June the 1st and go until July the 4th. And so we'll kick it off with the veneration of I think there are 14 of the Mexican martyrs. Their relics will be at San Fernando Cathedral, and so that'll be the kickoff for this month-long observance of prayer for religious freedom.
And again, when we speak of veneration of relics, we are honoring those saints who died for the faith, who lived the faith, because that's the first thing. You live the faith, and then, as my mug says here, get holy or die trying. You know, you're striving for holiness, and you die trying. And some of these actually died in a state of holiness, so we're going to venerate them at the cathedral between masses. What else are we doing?
Well, it also coincides with the opening of the movie For Greater Glory. Those adults who are interested in seeing this piece of history and of this fight for religious freedom in Mexico, and details the story of Blessed Jose Sanchez, a wonderful martyr for the faith. We certainly encourage you to. It's a piece of history, and reminds us of the holiness that is involved in claiming our religious freedom.
Bishop, just to note that on Catholic News Agency's website, catholicnewsagency.com, there's a little video clip of this saint, of the actor, I should say, the 14-year-old actor who played the part, and Mauricio Curi, and he speaks of how playing the part and preparing for it helped him as a 14-year-old become more awakened in his faith. So even parents may want to consider bringing their early teenagers or teenagers, especially all those confirmandi, all those young men and women whom you and the Archbishop have confirmed recently.
Sure.
This is what it means to live the faith.
Right, right. Yeah, and that was my caution, that there is violence in the movie, but certainly worthy to be seen by confirmandi, by teenagers. I would certainly have maybe their parents accompany them. Also, during this month of observance for religious freedom, we will be having on Flag Day a special observance as well, together with Catholic Life Insurance, the display of the flag and a special mass and picnic. And Archbishop Gustavo and I will also publish a new letter with regard to religious freedom, and particularly regarding the erosion of this freedom through the mandate from the Health and Human Services to mandate. We'll finish it up on July the 1st, on that Sunday, we will call our local parishes to ring their bells for freedom at noontime. And so all across the Archdiocese, we will call our pastors to ring our bells, our church bells, in unison for freedom as we pray. And we are encouraging people to fast and pray as well. Jesus says that certain demons can only be cast out through fasting and prayer. So we're calling people to prayer and to learn what is happening here in our country as we feel our religious freedom seems to be eroding.
And just in case people think that the HHS mandate is only about whether you agree or disagree with contraceptives or not, it's not that. That obviously is one of the issues, but it's much more than that. It is, does the government, any government, have the authority to go against the, is it the Second Amendment?
The First Amendment.
The First Amendment, that no, I should know my history, right? That there should be no establishment of religion or establishment of anything against the free exercise of religion.
Right.
And this affects us, it will affect me directly, because if the HHS mandate is not rescinded, if it's not taken off the table and done away with, and no, the accommodations are not sufficient.
Right, sure.
People like myself will lose health insurance because we are self-insured or semi-self-insured, or we cannot pay into a system that will allow for abortifacient, sterilization, and contraceptives.
Well, even if we're not self-insured, we pay for the insurance, and you know, these funds are fungible, as they say. So in some ways, we are paying into a fund that pays for these services that we object to.
So it would be what we call in moral theology cooperation with evil, with intrinsic evil, because we see the impeding of conception of life and the termination of human life as an intrinsically moral evil. Is that correct?
Sure. It's a material cooperation. We make a distinction between material and formal cooperation. Because we don't intend this to happen, it's not formal cooperation, but it's material because we are paying for it. But that brings us back to your point that that government, or rather that religion should be free to practice according to its laws, according to its internal laws. And this mandate requires us to violate our conscience.
And we cannot do that.
And
Bishop, we're going to have to continue this conversation in a second show.
Okay.
So I would invite you, our viewers and listeners, to stay with us as we continue to discuss this topic. And throughout this entire month, be tuned into CTSA Channel 15 and check out our website, satoday'scatholic.com, archsa.org, freedomofreligion.org, and all of our websites, so that you may know what's going on and pray along with us. Until we meet again, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May He smile upon you and be gracious to you. May He show you His countenance and grant you His peace.